Hey there, folks. Tonight we're diving into the wild world of economics. Specifically, we're talking about price controls. Now, I know what you're thinking. Economics on a Friday night, John, you wound me. But trust me, this is more exciting than watching paint dry. Think of price controls like setting boundaries on how much things can cost. There are two main types: price ceilings and price floors. Price ceilings set a maximum price that sellers can charge for a product or service. Rent control is a classic example. The government says, hold your horses, landlords, you can't charge more than this for rent. Then there's the younger sibling, the price floor. This one's all about setting a minimum price. It's like saying, hey, businesses, you can't pay people less than this amount. Minimum wage laws are the poster child for price floors. They aim to ensure that workers earn a living wage. So buckle up as we explore the ins and outs of price controls. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of price controls, let's talk about the folks who study this stuff for a living. Economists. I know, the word economist doesn't exactly scream thrilling Friday night entertainment. They're often seen as the stuffy professors with elbow patches on their tweed jackets, droning on about supply and demand. But in reality, they're more like the referees of the market game. Think of the economy as a giant, chaotic game with millions of players. You've got buyers and sellers, producers and consumers, all trying to score the best deals. It's a free-for-all out there, and things can get messy. That's where economists come in. They're the ones trying to make sense of this economic mayhem. They study how markets work, analyze the impacts of government policies, and try to predict what might happen in the future. Economists don't always agree with each other, but their differing viewpoints are important because they help us see the full picture. They highlight the potential trade-offs and unintended consequences of economic policies like our friend the price control. Let's talk about rent control, shall we? This is a prime example of a price ceiling in action. In cities like New York, where finding an affordable apartment can feel like winning the lottery, rent control has been hailed as a lifeline for tenants. It aims to keep housing affordable by limiting how much landlords can charge for rent. Sounds great in theory, right? On the surface, rent control seems like a win for renters, especially those on low incomes. But here's the catch: rent control can also discourage new housing construction. Why would landlords build more apartments if their profits are capped? This can lead to a shortage of affordable housing in the long run. Furthermore, rent control can disincentivize landlords from maintaining existing properties. If they can't charge higher rents to cover the costs of repairs, why bother? This can lead to a decline in the quality of rental housing. So, while rent control might seem like a straightforward solution to housing affordability, it's essential to consider the potential drawbacks. Price ceilings, like our pal rent control, can have both short-term and long-term consequences. In the short term, they might seem like a godsend for consumers. Imagine this: the price of gasoline suddenly spikes, causing widespread panic and outrage. The government, in an attempt to quell the unrest, decides to implement a price ceiling on gas. Initially, drivers rejoice. They can now fill up their tanks without emptying their wallets. But here's the rub: when the price of a good is artificially suppressed below its market equilibrium, demand skyrockets. Everyone wants in on that sweet, sweet deal. Meanwhile, suppliers, faced with lower profits, are less inclined to produce and sell gasoline. This mismatch between supply and demand leads to shortages. In the long run, price ceilings can distort market signals and hinder efficient resource allocation. So while price ceilings might offer a temporary reprieve for consumers, they can have significant and often detrimental long-term consequences. Now let's turn our attention to price floors, the other side of the price control coin. The idea behind minimum wage is simple: to ensure that all workers earn a living wage. On the surface, it seems like a no-brainer, but as with most economic policies, the devil is in the details. Minimum wage laws can lead to job losses, especially for small businesses. While they boost wages for some, they can create barriers for others, leading to higher unemployment rates. Minimum wage increases impact industries, locations, and skill levels differently. Modest hikes can boost low-income wages without major job losses. But in low-margin industries like restaurants and retail, the effects are more pronounced. Businesses may raise prices, cut hours, or automate to manage costs. Minimum wage hikes can worsen labor market inequalities. Skilled workers benefit, but entry-level workers may struggle to find jobs. Minimum wage is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Now, let's take a look at some real-world examples of price controls in action. New York City has long implemented rent control policies to address its housing affordability crisis. Meanwhile, Turkey's recent minimum wage hikes aim to combat inflation and support low-income earners. These policies, however, often lead to unintended consequences, complicating their intended benefits. Now, let's talk about a country that took price controls to the extreme. Venezuela. Once a thriving economy, Venezuela fell victim to a perfect storm of economic mismanagement, corruption, and a heavy reliance on oil exports. As oil prices plummeted and the economy spiraled downward, the Venezuelan government resorted to widespread price controls on essential goods, hoping to curb soaring inflation and make basic necessities more affordable for its citizens. However, instead of achieving the desired outcome, these price controls backfired spectacularly. With prices fixed below market value, businesses, both large and small, found themselves unable to cover their costs, leading to widespread shortages of essential goods. Supermarkets' shelves stood empty, basic necessities became scarce, and a thriving black market emerged to fill the void. Venezuela's experience serves as a stark warning about the dangers of excessive government intervention in the market. While price controls might seem like a tempting solution to address economic hardship, they can ultimately exacerbate existing problems and create a whole new set of challenges. So, if price controls aren't always the answer, what other options do governments have to address issues like affordability and income inequality? One such alternative is the use of subsidies. Unlike price controls, which directly manipulate prices, subsidies provide financial assistance to either producers or consumers, aiming to make essential goods and services more affordable without distorting market prices. For example, instead of imposing rent control, the government could provide housing subsidies directly to low-income families, allowing them to afford decent housing in the private market. Similarly, instead of mandating a minimum wage, the government could implement earned income tax credits, providing a refundable tax credit to low-income workers, effectively boosting their take-home pay without directly increasing labor costs for businesses. Tax credits and subsidies offer a more targeted approach to addressing specific economic challenges. They can be tailored to specific groups or industries, providing assistance where it's needed most without disrupting the broader market equilibrium. Navigating the complex world of economics requires a delicate touch, a sense of balance, and perhaps a well-worn copy of Economics for Dummies. Governments, in their quest to promote economic well-being, must tread carefully, always mindful of the law of unintended consequences. While the temptation to intervene in the market to address pressing issues like affordability and inequality is understandable, it's crucial to remember that markets are complex, interconnected systems. Like a delicate ecosystem, tinkering with one part of the market can have ripple effects throughout the entire system. Price controls, while seemingly straightforward solutions, can disrupt market equilibrium, create shortages, discourage investment, and fuel black markets. Instead of resorting to heavy-handed interventions, governments should consider a more nuanced approach, utilizing a combination of policies, including targeted subsidies, tax credits, investments in education and training, and fostering competition to create a more equitable and prosperous society. It's about finding the right balance between allowing markets to function efficiently and intervening strategically to address market failures and promote social welfare. So, there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of the wild world of price controls. We've seen how price ceilings, like rent control, can lead to shortages, discourage investment, and create unintended consequences. We've also explored how price floors, such as minimum wage laws, can impact employment, business costs, and exacerbate existing inequalities. The key takeaway here is that there are no easy answers in economics. Every policy decision comes with trade-offs, and what works in one context might not work in another. It's about carefully weighing the potential benefits against the potential costs. and finding the right balance between government intervention and allowing markets to function freely. Ultimately, the goal should be to create an economic system that works for everyone, one that promotes opportunity, fairness and sustainable growth. And that, my friends, is a goal worth striving for.